everyone, welcome to another Classic Movie Monday, and today I thought it would be interesting to briefly discuss the 1950 drama called All About Eve. This film in particular has been, I think, thoroughly recognized over the years, and is one that I think is rather interesting and offers a lot of commentary on various uh, things dealing with the whole idea of theater and stardom slash celebrity, and it deals with all of these concepts in a very interesting way. And so I thought it would be interesting to discuss this film. And basically, in case anybody isn't aware of what the plot entails, basically All About Eve is really what the title says it is. It is all about a character named Eve, but basically there are really two main characters, really, and the rest sort of being side characters, so to speak. Obviously, one of the main characters being Eve, but also Margot is the other female character, and Eve obviously is a girl's name, so two female characters, and one of them, Margot, being a sort of well-known actress in the theater. And obviously the 1950s were a time of when Hollywood was definitely getting more mainstream along with television, but at the same time there was this strong, I think, market for theater. Unfortunately today it's more geared towards television and movies as being the real primary forms into which people kind of consume entertainment in that sort of format, as opposed to actual stage production. But within the 1950s, we do see theater being fairly prevalent still. And Margot is supposed to be the person that's sort of the main star of that whole theater scene. And eventually, like obviously in the way beginning, really, ultimately Margot gets introduced to Eve, who basically kind of tries to be sort of a caretaker for Margot by doing various kinds of errands and house chores for her. And Eve does this instinctively because she wants to get herself into that whole world and eventually become an actress as well. And you'll see how eventually Eve's talent starts to show with the sort of side characters that take up part of the plot. And eventually you'll see how this goes to Margot's head. And it's not only the fact that Eve is somebody that's up and coming, but also she's fairly young. She doesn't have a whole lot of experience behind her, whereas Margot is seen as the older actress. I even think she states within the film at one point that she's really 40, so she's really past sort of her prime, so to speak. And you can obviously see the kind of pain and turmoil she has in sort of realizing her kind of insignificance as far as this whole career path that she's chosen to be in. And she sees how this really young person is capable of taking away that stardom that she kind of worked so hard to build. And you'll see how Eve's interaction with the other characters really impacts the plot. And what I also really like about this film, unlike other films that paint a very black and white sort of picture, like making one woman sort of the enemy and the other woman as this innocent, sparkly snowflake. I like how both of these characters have their shades of gray, and how they eventually, as the plot moves forward and eventually even reaches the end, how they have end up at least becoming more in common than you probably initially anticipate. And what I think this film does so well of doing is it knows how to establish a plot, because you don't really know where it's ultimately going, because it can go in a variety of different directions, and it does a good job in sort of revealing things gradually, and then it keeps the audience, I think, invested. So that's what I think is really something that made the film in particular stand out. And also the performances and the way the actors interact with each other, you do feel that it flows fairly naturally, and it does feel like it is something that is out of the 1950s era. Um, and I think it ultimately works well. I mean, you do get a sense of the themes and how, in a lot of ways we're kind of similar in the sense that we want to pursue these very kinds of superficial, you know, ideas just for the sake of having uh, a sense of, I guess, pride and almost ego, but it really doesn't end up producing really anything at the end of the day, because, you eventually pass your achievements on, and, you don't hold on to power and influence for ever. And I think that's something that this film tries to grasp. It tries to show you how age, as well as the sort of cycle of age, ends up impacting the way in which these characters kind of not only interact, but what they ultimately end up kind of becoming um, as the film goes on. So you really do see the development there. And it is, I think, rather fascinating, and one that I think is very, I guess, Hollywood-esque, or what you would think of when it comes to Hollywood, especially considering the fact that it is known for giving out all of these awards and praising people for various performances, and, bringing out this very kind of holier than thou image of a person. And then when you really look at the underneath the surface, you really do see the shades of gray, and you really do see how sometimes people are not necessarily what they ultimately seem. And I really like how the film gradually sort of reveals that, especially with Eve's character, because initially we don't really know too much about her. She kind of says certain things, and then you sort of realize how she uses certain tactics to kind of create this very innocent-like persona, but you really do feel that there's a sense of, of her really faking it, and I really love it when that's exposed, because I kind of like seeing characters who don't really show their true selves, don't let that shades of gray out, don't let the true nature of ourselves come out. I like when it's eventually revealed, because you really do see the kinds of, you really do see the facade, and it's really well done within this film. And I think not a whole lot of films have really explored this kind of really internal dilemma of dealing with having to kind of let go of something that you kind of invested your whole life into, and how that eventually the person who ends up getting replaced by you eventually goes through that similar process. So it's really interesting. I definitely would recommend this film if you're interested in drama sort of related films, if you like the 1950s style, if you enjoy these kinds of setups where it involves the arts and theater. You can find definitely something, I think, that's unique from this film. But I understand that it's definitely not a film for everyone. it does have the pacing of the 1950s. It doesn't, I wouldn't say that this film overstays its welcome, but as far as pacing is concerned, this film is definitely of its era. It is not as quick, and the answers aren't given to you in clear text constantly. So you have to kind of pay attention. It's sort of similar to The Godfather, you know, it drags on, but it kind of drags on with a purpose because you have to ultimately pay attention to everything that's kind of going on. And I think it's important that at least not all films, but some films actually do that because they get you to really internalize what's going on, and make you ultimately think. And ultimately, All About Eve succeeds in that regard. But I think that's ultimately really all I can say about this film without really giving too much away in regards to the characters and how this whole plot kind of gets orchestrated. I really want to save that for my audience members who have not seen the film. Uh, but if there are any questions, comments, concerns, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a pleasant day, week, month, and year, and I hope to see you all in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.